Hello, look, we can't be angry and miserable all the time, and I want to tell you an uplifting story. I found it in the Telegraph shortly after Remembrance Day, and I did want to talk about it then, but unfortunately a few other things have happened since the 13th of November, and so we got the, I kept the clipping, but it was pushed to one side. However, I definitely have to deal with it now, and that's what I'm going to do. First of all, I have to tell anyone who doesn't know that the Victoria Cross was a medal devised by Queen Victoria, who specified that it should be given to serving military people who showed extraordinary bravery and gallantry in the battlefield. And she also specified that it should be made of iron, a base metal. So the medal itself was just a symbol of what had happened. It had no value of its own. And it is, and if you get this medal, you have permission to put the words VC after your name. It's like a title. It becomes like a title. If anyone sees your name with VC after it, that's it's just a marvelous thing. You can give somebody like that more respect somehow for their outstanding bravery. Okay, I'm not saying other people aren't brave, and some people who should get VCs don't, but you know what I mean. All right, and what often happens with these VCs is that after the original owner has died, his descendants, well, they can't all have it, so they end up selling it, and they get some money which might get somebody a nest egg, send somebody through university, make a down payment on a house or whatever. This one sold for quite a lot of money, so it was very nice. But the tale of daring do, which I am about to relay to you, is just astonishing. I mean, it's like it's like the best of CGI adventure stories, the sort where you think, well, that could never happen in real life. Okay. Lord Ashcroft has the largest Victoria Cross collection in the world, and he's talking about this, which is the Victoria Cross won by somebody called Norman Jackson. In a quiet corner of Twickenham Cemetery, southwest London, beneath the outstretched branches of a gnarled cherry tree, there's a black marble tombstone, cherished memories of a dearly loved husband, father and grandfather, reads the inscription. However, it's 2 letters after the name of the individual that makes this grave so different from the others, VC. This is the grave of Warrant Officer Norman Jackson, VC. Lord Ashcroft says, there is no single VC action that I admire more than the one carried out by Jackson during a bombing mission in the spring of 1944. Norman Cyril Jackson was born in Ealing, West London on April the 8th, 1919, and within months he'd been adopted. He attended schools in Twickenham and then became a fitter and turner. That's a sort of engineer who makes components and fits them, turns them and then fits them. It's a highly skilled job. So it was a highly skilled working class job, and that was it. Nothing remarkable in his early life. On October the 20th, less than 2 months after the outbreak of the Second World War, he joined the RAF Volunteer Reserve, initially working as ground crew, then becoming a flight engineer. And this is him. In July 1943, and by then a sergeant, he joined 106 Squadron at Cyeston, Nottinghamshire, and completed around a dozen sorties before the squadron moved to RAF Metheringham, Lincolnshire, in early November. By April the 24th, 1944, Jackson had completed his scheduled tour of 30 operations, mostly over heavily defended German targets. However, before taking some time off, he volunteered for one more sortie. I mean, that in itself is the sort of stuff out of which films are made, isn't it? The guy who goes for just one more sortie, just to help his pals out. And then, yeah, all sorts of things happen. Anyway, so he went out on the night of April the 26th, 27th, and then this is what happened. Let's see. Here we are. The target for that night for the Lancaster crew was Schweinfurt. That's a good name for a target, isn't it? Which was at the centre of the German ball bearing industry. Oh, I thought they got most of their ball bearings from Sweden. Well, you live and learn. The Lancaster's bombs were dropped successfully, and the aircraft was climbing out of the target area when suddenly it was attacked by a night fighter at nearly 20,000 feet. So you got a crippled plane 20,000 feet up. It was April, which wouldn't have been warm anyway, but 20,000 feet up, it's going to be pretty chilly. The captain took evading action at once, but the enemy Focke-Wulf 190, is that 190, secured several hits. A fire started near a petrol tank on the upper surface of the aircraft's starboard wing. Okay, so we'll go this a step further. 20,000 feet up at night on a chilly, which would have been chilly on the ground, bloody freezing in the air, and one of the wings of your aeroplane is on fire. Right, so you can just imagine the picture of that. Actually, did they have an artist? Oh, here we are. There's an artist mock-up of that. So there, that's what it would have looked like. Okay. Right. Well, that's a good picture, because hold that in your mind. Sergeant Jackson had been thrown to the floor during the attack, and he was also wounded by shell splinters in his right leg and shoulder. So he was bleeding. He had been thrown about in a plane that had suffered a jarring attack. I mean, at that point, you know, I just sort of curl up and cry. Anyway, recovering his composure, that's beautifully put, he obtained his captain's permission to try to put out the flames. How beautiful that language was. Can you imagine the sort of language that was going on in that cabin at the time? Pushing a small fire extinguisher into the top of his flying jacket and grabbing a small axe, he jettisoned the escape hatch. That is, he opened a little hatch in the side of the plane. Right, so you're 20,000 feet up, in the dark, there's a fire on the wing of your aeroplane, and you open the door. He then started to climb out in order to reach the burning wing. I'm not sure that the hatch was over the wing. In fact, I believe it wasn't, so perhaps somebody who knows what Lancaster bombers look like can tell me. But that means he would have been edging along to get to the wing. 20,000 feet up, remember. Oh, and the plane was travelling at 200 miles an hour. Sort of breezy. He released his parachute inside the aircraft, which enabled the other crew to hold on to the rigging, playing them out. This is terribly badly printed here. Playing them out as Jackson crawled into the unknown. So there he is, 20,000 feet up, 200 miles an hour, middle of the night, and he's out there being, well, sort of on the end of a parachute trying to scrabble over a burning wing. Let's see. As he inched his way towards the fire, he slipped and grasped onto the leading edge of the starboard wing. Next bit of the story. Using the axe to secure a grip, he fought the blaze with the extinguisher, but despite his best efforts, the fire spread, and soon his face... What were those bombers made of? I mean, they weren't made of canvas anymore. Anyway, maybe aluminium probably, and aluminium does burn, doesn't it? Anyway, I don't know. Yeah, any Lancaster bomber experts out there? You tell me. Despite his best efforts, the fire spread, and his face, hands and clothing were severely burnt. I should think, the fire was being blown towards him at 200 miles an hour. Even worse, the enemy fighter came back and strafed the Lancaster a second time, forcing Jackson to drop the fire extinguisher. Unable to keep his hold, Jackson was swept through the flames and into the night. When last seen falling towards the ground, his parachute was only partly inflated. Inflated? You don't inflate a parachute. Unfolded, and was burning in a number of places. Jackson, with his parachute ablaze, was unable to control his descent and landed heavily. Look, I'm surprised he was still alive. He suffered a broken ankle, his right eye was closed, and his hands were burnt so badly as to render them useless. At daybreak, so he spent a night there in the cold, in terrible pain, I suppose. Remember, he had a broken ankle, so he had to crawl. He crawled to the nearest village on his knees and elbows because his hands were in such a mess. Once the German authorities were alerted to his presence, he was taken as a prisoner of war and transported to Dulag Luft, a prison camp that acted as collection and interrogation centre, for newly captured Allied aircrew before they were transferred to more permanent camps. However, due to his 17 separate injuries, Jackson spent his first 10 months in hospital before being imprisoned with other POWs. During his you think he'd have enough? Oh no. During his captivity, he made 2 escape attempts. The second, close to the end of the war in Europe, was successful. He met up with troops from General Patton's Third Army near Munich. And apparently 4 others from the 7 Lancaster crew had survived the attack. After the war, he was reunited with his wife Alma. They eventually had 7 children, 4 sons and 3 daughters. And this is him in old age, a smoker. That might be why he died comparatively young. But it could be as a result of, the ongoing effects of the injuries he'd had from a fall in a burning, only partially opened parachute. As the full story of Jackson's courage emerged, he was recommended for the VC. His decoration was announced in the London Gazette on October the 26th, 1945, and the citation ended, "By his ready willingness to face these dangers, he set an example of self-sacrifice which will ever be remembered." Well, I didn't know about it, but I will remember it now. Jackson returned to Britain on VE Day and received his VC at Buckingham Palace from George VI on November the 13th, 1945. He retired with the rank of warrant officer and with a disability pension, so you see he was not that tip-top. And even so, remember, he'd escaped from the POW camp. He was always modest about his wartime role, once saying of his VC action, "I was the most experienced member of the crew, and they all looked to me to do something." Well, he definitely did something. So the VC was auctioned in 2004, and it got £200,000. Now, £200,000 was worth a bit more than it's worth now. It's plenty of money now. And well, yeah, that's the end of the story. And I wanted to tell you this because it's just an amazing story. It almost defies belief what that man did. And yes, his story should always be remembered. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Granbo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.